The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Omnibus Volume 2, and Wrist Locks by Keith Pascal. These are the two books we're going to be talking about today on Coffee with Alain. Appreciate you joining me. Of course, I have a book mug this morning. Some of the books I enjoyed as a kid, mostly Edgar Rice Burroughs on there, Tarzan and John Carter of Mars. A couple of Conan by Howard on that cup as well. All of those are books that I enjoyed as a kid, and I still enjoy once in a while now. I'll throw in an old Tarzan book or Conan book just for old time's sake. Fun little reads. Hope that you read. I was listening to Larry Winget yesterday, and he was talking about how appalling it is that so many people don't read. And he's a voracious reader, read thousands and thousands of books on self-help and success and business to help him get where he's at. I encourage you to read as well. Read for enjoyment, read for education. If you don't have any money, it's not an excuse. Libraries are free. You can get tons of free Kindle books on Amazon. My Kindle is full of books that I've purchased and way more that I've gotten free off of Kindle. You just got to pay attention and get the things that interest you and topics that you want to learn about. The stuff is out there. You just have to create the time, make the time to make reading a priority. Let's talk about a couple books today. First one I want to talk about, I just finished this recently, The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. It's the Omnibus version, Volume 2. If you know that, last year I read the four big tongue-tied this morning, need more coffee. I read the four big volumes of Master of Kung Fu, Shang-Chi. This year, I read these two huge volumes of The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, which have Shang-Chi in them, Master of Kung Fu, but also Iron Fist and other stories, because what these are, it's a collection of the old black and white magazines, the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu magazines. So it's not just the comic strips of, Iron Fist and those, but they had articles. I mean, here's an article here. I remember one of the last volumes had an article on Bob Wall, who I had a chance to talk with and such before he passed away. You might remember Bob from Enter the Dragon and some of the other movies back then, although he made his money in real estate and so forth, and he only did a few movies. There was stuff on Billy Jack because he was popular in the 70s. Obviously, there was stuff on Bruce Lee because he was so popular in the 70s and passed away. So the magazines just have a ton of articles and the comic strips. I mean, there was James Caan right there from that movie where he was one of the first people that I remember using a cane for self-defense in a movie. And that was back in the 70s. And I don't know where that page went now, but I just saw that picture of James Caan. There he is right there from the Killer Elite. And James Caan was actually a martial artist, and he used a cane to fight with. You can see it wrapped around his arm there in that picture in the Killer Elite. He also used a cane to defend himself and beat somebody up in the Las Vegas television show that he did when he was older, sometime in the early 2000s. So it's just sort of interesting because, I really like the cane. I did that 2 DVD set on cane for Paladin Press, which will be re-released and added to when I do the cane online course, which will be coming in 2024. But, that's cool because James Caan and his cane right there. So these were just really interesting, fun reads, nostalgic. Some of the articles about the martial arts, it's interesting to see how they portrayed them in the 70s versus what we have now. But I remember these magazines as a kid, and it was just so cool to be able to get these 2 volumes, which I read this year, and have all of those magazines in the collection and reread them cover to cover. And I just read them slow. I'd, read maybe one portion of a magazine, or maybe I'd sit down and read a whole magazine, and just took a long time reading the book, and, finally finished it. It's not one I'm giving away right now. It's going to go back on the shelf, but pretty cool. You can find these on Amazon and different places. I think they're out of print. They're fairly expensive. I mean, it has a $125 price tag here. I don't know what you'll find them for on eBay or Amazon, if they still have some or anything like that. So they're not cheap books, but they are pretty cool. And if you're a martial artist and you collect books like I do, it's really cool to have these in the collection. Going to say good morning to Dixon. Dixon says Killer Elite, one of my favorite movies from back in the day. It was a great movie. They redid it with Jason Statham, and I think De Niro was in that with Jason Statham and such. But that original with James Caan, it had Burt Young, I believe, in it. Paulie from Rocky, but he was in that, and just a good movie back from the 70s. And I just love that James Caan used the cane in it. That was just so cool to see the cane being used, because I think the Killer Elite and the Trial of Billy Jack were two of the 70s movies where you actually got to see cane techniques being used for self-defense. The other book I wanted to talk about today, an older book off the shelf, an autographed copy of Wrist Locks: From Protecting Yourself to Becoming an Expert by Keith Pascal. Keith and I used to keep in touch, and we just haven't communicated for a long time. But I found this, a really good book explaining the concepts behind different locks. Now, you can look and see there's no photographs. There's just some illustrations, but it does a really good job of explaining locks. And when I teach joint locks, I always tell people you need to understand why they work. Don't just collect techniques, and then you can only do the technique if the person attacks you in that specific manner. You need to understand the principles behind techniques, understand how they work, why they work, so you can apply those in a variety of situations and different types of attack, because you are not going to be attacked the same way as the partner does in the training hall when you're learning. This adds to your understanding and concepts and the why of why techniques work, to help you better understand the anatomy and the intricacies of joint locks to make them more effective. So I did really like this book, and just wanted to share it today, sort of the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu and Wrist Locks martial art themed program today. And those are the two I wanted to share. Thank you for everybody that watches. Thank you for everybody signing up for the newsletter. It's going out tomorrow. If you don't have the sign up yet, enjoylifesafely.com. Go there, put your email, put your name. You'll be on that list. Get some good stuff. Everybody, go out and make it a spectacular Saturday. I'll be back tomorrow. Going to talk about an interesting movie, John Woo's new take on a revenge film. Saw it last night. It was an interesting film. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. It's called Silent Night. It came out yesterday in the theaters. So until then, make it a spectacular Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow.